So my name's Andrea Mercer. I'm the Senior Manager for Audiences and Communities at Derby Museums, and I manage the Learning and Audience Development programmes across the sites. Unfortunately, Hannah can't be with us today. She was originally supposed to be talking. And this project, the Derby Siltmill Museum of Making, I just want to say wouldn't have happened without Hannah, who's really at the helm of leading this project. So I'm just going to sort of take you through what it is and where we're at the moment. So the Siltmill is the site of the world's first factory. It stands on the southern gateway of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it was mothballed by the City Council in 2011 and taken over by Derby Museums, who were formed in 2012, originally a service within the council. And we wanted to take forward a new vision for the building and manage the museums and archives on behalf of the city. So to do this, we configured basically our organizational approach to one that was very audience-focused and human-centered, so working with different people to co-produce this museum of making. And we've produced and developed this over the past 4 years. So the context, so in order to kind of understand what the context we're working in Derby is from the 18th century to now, so the context for this was, in the 18th century, the site, the Wilson factory, cropped up. It was built out of entrepreneurship. So drawings were created drawings were stolen, in a way, from Italy to come and produce and manufacture silk on a huge scale in Derby, powered by a giant water wheel, so it was its own source of power. And so that it was really a step change in how things were made. In that factory, there was 74,000 yards of silk made 3 times a minute. Then we kind of go into the 18th century Enlightenment, so in a period where lots of things were questioned, God, science, nature, innovation, and we had polymaths like Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin, living in the city. And the Siltmill was actually visited by Benjamin Franklin in 1771. So then we kind of come on to the 19th century, and the railways are expanding across the world, which was led in large part by the Midland Railway, who were based in Derby. And the supply chains in the city then hugely benefited from the growth of the railways, creating St Pancras. So St Pancras Station, the iron was cast in Derbyshire. And then we move on to kind of the 20th century. So the confluence of all these assets in the city, so its reputation, the skills and position, led to new industries then moving to Derby, including Rolls-Royce, who have built aero engines, and this one is the Eagle engine, which flew the first transatlantic flight. So at the end of the 20th century, we saw new digital industries then taking hold, and Tomb Raider was then invented in Derby as the game. And then here we are kind of in the 21st century. Derby is the UK's #1 high-tech city. More people are employed in advanced engineering than anywhere else, and major businesses like Toyota, Rolls-Royce, Bombardier are making aero engines, cars, trains, and even Formula One car body parts from composites, all along with the supply chains. But we've got a problem. We have some of the highest areas of deprivation, lowest social mobility, and our schools are in the bottom 6 of English schools for attainment. And people who are originally from Derby are not seeing the direct employment benefits or lifestyle expectations that come from being in a city of this great significance. Our children are not attaining and feeling aspirational. So what part, then, can the redevelopment of the Museum of Making, the site of the Wilson factory, have in turning that around? So this is the question we asked in the project approach, and it speaks directly to our sort of organizational approach, which is focused very much on the needs of people, as I've said. And it's formed the basis for funding bids for a project that's seen as gained the commitments of 99% of the 16.4 million project costs that we're getting from the HLF. So we prototyped the museum beforehand, so we've got an iterative approach to how we work. And we've prototyped this in a project called Remake. So we remade the ground floor, and we prototyped, refitted the workshops out, and engaged 8,000 people in volunteering. And we also measured their well-being, so how making makes them feel. And there was a clinical impact on well-being. So just to define then the project principles, which we went on to do, they are very STEAM-powered, so STEM and the arts. We are inspired by the makers of the past, made by the makers of today, and empowering the makers of the future, and that's our kind of project principles. We want the collections to be 100% accessible. In most museums, only 4% of the collections are accessible. Because this is a building created with public money, so it needs to be publicly accessible, and also needs to kind of work within the context that it's in. So the last 18 months, the design team that we've been working with, consisting of architects and exhibition designers, have been designing the concepts ready to make this museum. So we're inspired by the makers of the past. So we've been working in the museum, which has been like a project lab, to engage people in finding out about what the collections are and telling us their stories and sharing their stories with us, because we're not the experts on some of these things. So we've got a hub, which we call a working hub, so collections can be brought out and processed, and people can come and see what they are and talk to the curators and find out a little bit more about that. Because our collections embody the skills, the creativity, the innovation that's within Derby and still present within Derby. And then, so made by the makers of today. So we've been prototyping, we've done lots of prototyping workshops with people, finding out how they want the collections to be displayed, and finding out also how they want them to look and how they want them to be, I guess how they want them to be interpreted as well is another element of that. And then, so empowering, we've done a lot of work on testing out our learning programs for schools and all different types of audiences, so young people, adults, families. We've done quite an interesting project with some young people who were trying to inspire other young people to make by posting videos on YouTube. So they were really doing like how-to videos to try and see how they could inspire other young people to make. So we've done loads and loads of work on that. We're currently now at the point where we're ready to put in our final bid. This is what the Museum of Making currently looks like at the architect stage REBA 3. And what we want to do during its period of closure is create a mobile museum of making, which will go out into the communities of Derbyshire by refurbishing a vintage bus from our collections and really get to find out about the communities in Derbyshire and what they want the Museum of Making to be. So it's an iterative process. It basically doesn't stop.